Everybody, and welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and curious minds, welcome to the GALA Town Hall, where we gather virtually to celebrate and reflect on what can only be described as a breakout year for artificial intelligence. In the realm of innovation, this past year has been nothing short of extraordinary, with AI emerging as a driving force, maybe not just a good one, behind transformative change across industries.
Dave, that sounds very, very GTP-like. Did you get any help here? I mean, very eloquent, but it doesn't sound like you.
What? Not eloquent? What do you mean? Okay, it's a fair cop. It's a fair cop. Britty, you caught me with my hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah. Why shouldn't you use it? Yeah, why shouldn't you?
Well, look, isn't new stuff great? And you know, should I have to come up with everything myself? Is that the question that many of us have been asking this year?
Well, the question that I would like to ask is, if you're going to do it, please at least do it with the paid version. You know, there's a lot of difference, like ChatGPT 4 and beyond. So,
okay, maybe you have a point. Maybe you have a point. I did actually continue with the unpaid version, Jose, and ask, you know, how do you reflect on the state of AI in the language industry? And they had an answer, of course. Is it an answer that we all have been thinking of? Maybe not, right? So I think, you know, sometimes we're going to hear things that we expect. There's a kind of a cognitive thing going on because that's what this stuff does. Maybe sometimes we see stuff that we don't expect and we're surprised. So
just looking at it here, the world of language and AI, that surprised me. I like the R here.
There you go. So, you know, who hasn't seen some first mover, let's call it, use cases enter normal lives this year? And, you know, clearly this type of technology has come in, it's infiltrated behavior. In April, my 17-year-old told me she was using OpenAI for some of her written projects in school and had a smile on her face, thinking that she was the queen of the town, right? I tried to have her see the error of her ways and ended up with a kind of a compromise comment where I said, look, I was pretty sure your teachers are going to tell you soon that they have a way of knowing that you used AI for producing your projects. She retorted, no, they're not that smart. Lo and behold, 4 weeks later, the teachers sent memos, instructions to everyone and play that mind game with the students, and grades went back to normal. So are we going to have something like that happen in this world? And are we going to see a level of normalization going on? I'd like to think of things in terms of, you know, navigation and maps. And anyone recognize this place? Anyone? Alison? Maybe some people on the call. If you're at GALA in Dublin, the way I would pronounce it, you may have visited Trinity Library, and this is the oldest and many say the best library in Dublin. Access to first editions of many of the classics, where you won't see them anywhere else in the world. And when you do go in there and you kind of have a look at the shelves, you'll see that they have an indexing system which is a bit difficult to understand first up, right? You've got to figure out their indexing system. So will we be navigators? And if so, how do we start in the various roles in this business ecosystem? So stick with us today. We're going to talk about looking back on the year and paging through this conversation with Jose Palomares and Britta Argard, and also have a look at some data which many of you have inputted to the GALA survey that we ran, that the team at GALA ran. Perhaps that would help us understand some of the insights within the industry. We got some great responses on quite a few of them, and also to look forward to 2024. We'll have some other voices join us. And you too can join us. So feel free to do this during what we call the open mic portion of this town hall. So let me get on with it. No more bad jokes, I promise. Let's start with a coffee table conversation and get thoughts from Jose and Brita. Jose, starting with you, on the client side, what's going on in AI? What are you doing about AI?
I just want to qualify first that the bad jokes things, please don't promise things you cannot deliver. That's a first in business. So I'm not like the most you know, I know that people are hearing all sorts of like really advanced, phenomenal, life transforming, world shaking changes in AI. But I gotta say that in my case, it's been a slow adoption. So I am using AI, my team is using AI, and we use it on a daily basis. We use it for things that, you know, same thing that some of us were advocating for just like 6 months ago. Use it for as a personal productivity tool for ideation. It is like well accepted. Now we've gone into trying to be the ones who teach other people, meaning like other departments from technical writers to marketing people on how to use it for them to be more productive. So for instance, if you're like writing copy and you know that you have like 6 different personas that you're targeting, try and write copy once and then have something like some sort of like Gen AI tell you, oh, this is like for this other persona, you should like frame it as that. For this other persona, you should frame it as that. For that is slightly different demographic. And think of like, for me in business, for instance, there's like someone who is like a financial person and an IT person. So they want to hear a different type of language. So on creating our source content, that is like being used as a super productivity tool. And the same thing with like whatever we've been encouraging people to in tools that we use normally is like, for instance, we use Grammarly fairly extended. It's like Grammarly has options to like try to help you be more, you know, to improve your language and give you suggestions. And then of course you will review it and you will perfect it. So we have like a lot of these business cases where we're just like telling people you could be doing more faster, of course, never removing the human in the loop.
Right. So as a support mechanism, a managed, controlled process and implemented, but ensure that you're managing risk as you do.
Yeah. And then there is like some technically things that you would expect to hear is like we're using generative AI to help us with automating captioning and automating dubbing. Actually, it's not only like generative AI that it's behind that, but you know, it is a practical use of AI that has evolved enough so that we can use it. So we're like doing tens and like in some cases like multiple of 20 times how much content we were able to do before. And in some cases, we're like automating, creating scripts. In some cases, it's translated. It's not translated. It's transcribing them. And in some cases, it's just like doing subtitling or preparing a better script for dubbing so that it's also easier to pronounce. So a lot of like practical changes, and in that is driving hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings. What we're not doing, what you're not going to hear from me is like using it for translation. That is actually something where what we do is try to tell people is like it's not quite there yet. And in my case, in my company, we have been investing heavily on machine translation. So we want to continue to see machine translation as the most mature solution that can actually give us the results that we want. So we're being very cautious in like preventing people from just jumping ahead and going and using it for translation. I know that some people are having like slightly different results. In my experience, my company's experience, we're not ready for that yet. MT is still a superior type of tool to invest in.
Right. And similarly, during the rise of MT, in particular, when neural machine translation came into play, you know, companies were taking that approach as well. And do you think there's just a general case for waiting before implementation, particularly in the localization workflow?
Yeah, and I don't think there's only the localization workflow. I think that localization is a reflection of like so many other industries. There is actually a trend of thought that we're like much bigger companies than anything in localization have like tried experimented with so many things and decided, well, we don't have like a really good case for production. So that means that we could probably just wait and see, especially when everything is changing every other day. So I have, for instance, I've been in this like silly conversation where we're like trying to decide, well, if OpenAI and ChatGPT is not secure, let's figure out how we build our own thing. And then halfway through that, OpenAI releases like an enterprise version that is basically self-contained and secure for you to use. And then you look back at what you were working on, and it's like sunken cost. Should have we waited? So we had like a few of those, and through those, I think that we're in a position of like, I think it's a perfectly valid case for, unless you have an obligation, unless your company is pressuring you, unless the market goes crazy about X, that is a perfect good case for waiting, because we're like changing, like most of us, we haven't seen that big of a change in technology ever.
Right. So wait for the sediment to settle to a certain degree and then make smart decisions. Britta, bring you in here. What are some of the reasons to wait from your perspective, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't say waiting. I think waiting is not the answer, and don't get me wrong. I mean, this is certainly not a drill. The hype will not just go over and then we said, oh my God, we are better off there. I truly believe that this is changing everything. I mean, literally everything. But I would also say where, the pressure on service providers like us has also been from many clients. So what are you doing with AI? Can you now deliver this service, cheaper, faster, better? And in that sense, it's really to take a step back and ask the question to also the client is really, what is the real value for you for your enterprise? As Jose just said, I mean, AI was never conceived to replace translation, even if maybe we ourselves in the localization industry say, oh my God, everybody's now thinking we are becoming obsolete. But as Jose said, I mean, in many cases, NMT is still superior because NMT has a single purpose, whereas AI, multilingual AI, is a multi-purpose, right? And when you then get the discussion going, asking the client, what is this really about, and the complexity of content, then suddenly there is a realization that it is actually about data. And when that realization kicks in, then the question goes back to actually the client or the user saying, I mean, do you have your data in order? Because only when you have your data in order, you can actually start getting value out of AI across an enterprise. And so really trying to understand that, I mean, what AI probably is best at is to, vectorize, understand structured data in the first place, and make those enormous amounts of data accessible and consumable also by machines. And then suddenly you have a totally different conversation. And in that respect, I would say you should not wait. You should try to get your grip around your data. You need to understand also what is happening inside across an enterprise, tons of different repositories and systems where your enterprise data lives. So I think that's really where you should be looking first, and maybe waiting with the implementation, as you said, Jose. But you really need to take this seriously. So yes, wait, but put your real focus on where it matters.
Yeah, and just to address something that you just say is like, yeah, it's not like wait and do nothing. It is wait and keep watching and keep seeing where you can like position yourself. Because the problem is like, for instance, I can look at my data, but the moment I only get one chance to like mobilize resources in my organization. And the same thing with like many other people is like, I only get one chance at getting this right. And it's going to be like test through, and it's going to be, and think about like me getting engineers at the organization to build something. If I don't build the right thing, then I might not have another chance. So I would rather wait and see what other people are building who have that a lot more agility than what I do in terms of resources. And I just keep monitoring. And I pick something that is mature, which is, for instance, what we've done with like artificial voices and dubbing and everything. It's like, it seemed to have like so many players already doing it. And I could talk to providers and customers who had real scenarios, who could show me results. Then I invest in that. But for everything else, I just need to keep a distance because I don't get to adapt too quickly too many times. I'm very constrained.
Very interesting. And Britta, just back to you for a second on, that idea of, constrainment is interesting, but also, the comment about strategy and being asked by customers, do you have a strategy for this technology, and what is possible? What are you seeing in that space just from where you sit? And is it a case of people are hodging together strategies? There's patchwork going on. There's starting to be semblance of strategies, or just this unknownness.
I would say, I mean, of course, there are so many levels here also of maturity, especially, right? I mean, so and again, this is nothing, not good or bad if you're high or low on the maturity level, but because I mean, this is a very big transition of many companies. But I say in the large corporations who ask about strategies, I really think that we are now, and this is why I'm so excited about the advent of AI. I used to say this is, the best that ever happened to us in the language industry, because now we have the strategic discussions about how language is a strategic asset and actually can drive a strategy discussion forward, which also means that we will be part of discussion on a higher level, but also I don't know if you can see that, Jose, on the buyer side, that you're also drawn into discussions more, multidisciplinary, right? There are many people who now consult you because there is something about both data, language, knowledge that can certainly tie into a bigger strategy. And of course, especially from looking at digital marketing. And I mean, everything is changing, right? I mean, search will never be the same again. And I don't think we haven't even seen the beginnings yet, which means that you need to consult someone like your localization department or your partner.
And that's, really, I suppose, what I'm thinking here is, on one side, you're leveling up, and I think, as you're saying, shining a light on the abilities of the localization industry to be able to level up and provide services. Now's the time, right? The light is shining, but the unknownness on the same side, what are the impacts of that? Is that something that just leads to levels of exhaustion or worse? Are you seeing any of that at the moment, or are we still in that kind of up curve?
No, I definitely see. We also had in our survey here I think one question of the FOMO, right? I can see certainly also some of my clients who never have been first movers, they might not even have adopted, MT, but suddenly they want it all in one. So there's also this push, and at the same time a sense of, we don't really understand this, and they believe that someone else understands all of it. I don't think that is the case, to be honest. So it is really a collective exploration of this, and it's totally okay to say we don't know yet. But of course, you need to be comfortable in that uncomfortableness.
Right, in that zone, right? There's a comment in from Williams in the channel there. I believe the whole AI movement is putting LSPs on their toes, since we've been forced to put a lot of order in terms of process, data governance, etc. Thank you very much for the comment. Has AI not been on the server side in some shape or form for the past 20 odd years, Britta?
Sorry, I was just reading the comments here in the chat.
So yeah, just AI, on the server side of the industry. you know, my perspective is it's always been there. You know, some kind of AI has
Yeah,
always been.
yeah, totally. And you know, it is, but I feel like it's almost like we're defending ourselves. You know, we have been working with this for, you know, 10 or more years, and you know, since at least in the advent of neural machine translation in you know 14 or whatever. And that is also true. And we definitely had our chat moment in some way or other. Just the world didn't see that yet, right? But then again, also, I really think that this also needs to move us somewhere else. Not necessarily from the understanding of the technology. I really think that we have a deep understanding and expertise there, but where it should not make us defensive. We need to be open to that. This is also challenging our business models. And again, I see that as a very positive move here, even if it can be a bit scary.
Brilliant. Jose, you gave some really interesting information on what is happening at your own company. What are you seeing, you know, with other companies on the client side?
I think that people are picking whatever it is that feels like especially like low-hanging fruit. So in my case, for instance, it went the way of like multimedia, and it's going in the way of like support. But I had a chance to like talk to some other people who are like they prioritize support to begin with, you know, having like proper using generative AI in conversations with support agents, with or without translation involved. And that is like a field that is like way ahead of what most people think. There's like some really cool things that some other buyers are doing where, you know, translating sentiment analysis or just like taking your response and then transforming it so that it actually matches the profile of the person that is like talking to you. So there is some really cool things on support that are happening. And then there is a lot of people who are really chasing, can we do translation at a scale, which I personally don't necessarily agree with. And because I think that it's not, again, the right technology. I think that people are being pushed in that direction, and then they're reacting with what the pressure is telling them to do. But they should try and do something else. There is a lot of like summarization in general all over the place, like happening at everywhere. There is, of course, ideation. Everybody's using it as a, again, personal tool. And some people are just trying to empower their translation communities. The same thing that we're seeing on LSPs and in translation tools, we're also seeing in some buyer side, where just before someone produces either an English or a source piece of text, it gets cleaned up by an AI process, or it gets reviewed, transformed, modified through an AI process. So a lot of work on the source language is what I also hear that peers are doing successfully. And then we're all just like watching around and trying experiments. But so some of the comments also mentioned like the importance of security and privacy. Those are like big things that are like getting in our way. That we can't just go and use what is like publicly available, not even from that tool and that provider that is like so cool that you really want to trust. It's a different conversation when you pull all the stops and like auditing them and see what their security is going to look like, and if they can support everything that you need, because this is no longer like an audit once and approve. It is audit you now and audit you in 6 months and audit you in 12 months to see if you're still compliant to the things that we can do. So a lot of the work is going in towards compliance and creating environments that, you know, that are like secure. The one thing that I haven't said is there's a bunch of people trying to like build their own LLMs with their own content. And we've been doing that ourselves, but then we run into issues about like, you know, privacy and quality control, because it still hallucinates even with our own information. So, and that is like really risky when you're trying to like use it, for instance, documentation is a perfect case, but what if it gives you the wrong instruction? Because those systems, unless you channel them through support in which you have the human in the loop, if you're just using them for documentation raw, right, delivered to the user, you could be giving someone the wrong instruction. Now think, if depending on what type of product you are, how dangerous that could be. What if you're like a payroll software, and then you just go and mess it up big? We're a payments company, so among other things, so we can mess up.
It puts Reed, the blank manual in perspective, right? Maybe we're going to have a new way of looking at that, right? Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Britta. For anyone who's just joined us, we're at the GALA Town Hall. We're having a conversation about looking back a little bit of, you know, the year that AI arrived, maybe some would say. We're now going to have a look at survey results. So we had a survey that was run by Jessica Issa and the team at GALA. And thank you them for doing that. And a number of questions were asked and answered, and we'd like to share with you now some of the results. So we'll share those here, and Alison will also tell you later when you may be able to see them again, so you don't have to strain your eyes. So first up, we have, first question was, is your organization currently using or planning to use AI-powered technologies? No prizes for guessing what people are saying here, right? The next question, similarly, just to build on from that, which best describes your organization's state of adoption? Now, I'm adding the two lighter blues there, deploying in production at 42%, testing at 39%. That's over 80%.
Yeah.
Britta,
it really surprised me, this one, because I mean, also we are speaking, as we said before, I mean, a little bit of the FOMO. Do we really believe in this? But of course, I mean, the question is also very broad. I mean, testing, what does it mean? I mean, is it that you use ChatGPT on when you write your emails, or what is it actually, right? So I really also, I think it could reflect a little bit on, you don't want to say that, yeah, you're just waiting.
Yeah, so is it what you say rather than what you're actually doing? It's a great point. And we welcome comments in the chat on this as well. Thank you for comments so far. We will take more of those in open mic, but please keep them coming. Hey, let's move on with the survey. And next question, all right, we can skip this, was what are the obstacles or challenges that you're most concerned about? So, you know, I don't have to read you all the data there, but you can clearly see a couple of highlights, right? Privacy, confidentiality, data security are really coming up, as well as training and resources. Jose, what do you think? Does that just make sense?
To me, it does. I mean, I agree, and I think that it's a double-edged thing. With I think that we're using it as an argument and also as an excuse. And I mean, users are not necessarily bad. It's like it allows us to say, well, you know, there's a reason why we can't move faster in this, is because there is a lot of like uncertainty if we can do it like in a secure way. And of course, for us to answer those two, we need to have like training and resources. So it is a vicious circle there. We can't do it. It is scary, and we don't have enough resources to go and do it. But like I said, to me, the funny bit is that I think that we use it a little bit as an excuse. I certainly do. It's like, wow, if I have an executive,
because we have those constraints already now, also with our other technologies, right? I mean, in that sense, it's not necessarily new.
Yeah, no, it isn't. The only thing that has changed is that now everybody knows something about it. And before, you could still like go around and say MT, and people would be like, what? But now you go and say Gen AI, and people go like, oh. That is what has like really changed, and then the whole ecosystem around us. But yeah, definitely agree with this. And I like seeing like ethical concerns and things like that. They are like lower in the list because they're as important as they are, and they're going to be like super important for our well-being. But definitely when you're being like pushed as a business,
so is there a point to be sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's crossing you there. I think, is there a point to be made for the bar chart shifting then, as you know, you mentioned maturity earlier, as that maturity increases and privacy, data security becomes less of a concern? Does ethical go up? Will bias go up? Budgetary? Are we going to see that?
I think so. I think that those are like barriers to adoption. Those are the excuses that we have, and then things like ethical will become an open field for everybody to talk about. And some people will be more ethical than others, and we will need to like create regulation around it to actually control it. That is how what happens with powerful technologies. Think about like cloud. as like the previous big change. It's like same thing. First is how are we going to do it? How do we use it? And then we got into, well, how much do we do it? How much
So
push?
interesting. So Jessica, looks like this survey will have to be run a few times to get more data and see how we're progressing. So
I would also expect maybe that, I mean, over time, you know, the question about, you know, brand guardianship will be more dominant here. I mean, here we speak about ethical concerns or bias, but actually the quest for always also, you know, to keep your brand voice and not just be mediocre, even if it's eloquent, as you were, Dave, in the beginning. I would also expect that this is a concern that is going to rise at some point.
Yeah, quality should be in there.
Yeah.
But fun fact about like Ricard in the comments said earlier, who's gonna own that data? And I want to say is like, I don't know, same people that owned MT data. Yes, it is a barrier. We're like all wondering what are we gonna do about that? But you know, we still don't have an answer for MT, and we're still using it.
But I think actually, I mean, there's another complexity that will go into it. It's not only who owns the data, but who is responsible for the result. Is it the developer? Is it the data owner, so to speak, or is it the user? So I think there's a complexity that we haven't even, you know, grasped yet.
great stuff. And I see a comment from Johan, very worrying that ethical concerns are this low. Thank you, Johan. Anna's in there. People are more worried about confidentiality now and aren't using AI as much as they would like to. And ethical may come later. Good conversation going on there. Patrick is involved. Let's keep it going there, and we'll get to open mic. Number 4 here is, what are the main reasons your organization is deploying AI-powered technologies, right? So again, there should be some kind of, you know, logic, common sense to the answers, right? Let's call it out if there isn't. We had 184 responses, by the way, and that's still growing, I believe, but you know, it's a very good sample size. Speed and efficiency gains. And then, you know, another one that was interesting to see was the fear of missing out, FOMO, was maybe not so high. Is that something that may again switch like a graphic equalizer later? What do you think?
You were breaking out a little bit, Dave, but
Yeah.
I think that you were asking a similar question, Rita, as before, if it's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I think the FOMO will go away, and people will.
Sorry, that's on me.
People will.
So, what do you think
down.
of this, Rita or Jose?
Sorry.
Yeah. You are a little bit interrupted here. I don't know. So we are speaking at the same time. As I said, I think FOMO will definitely slow down. I mean, people will relax a little bit. I actually wanted to put spotlight also on the reduction of human error. I was a bit surprised about that, positively actually, because I really also think a lot about the shift in understanding that now AI machines, there's something that machines can do better than humans. Jose, you were also speaking about, you know, quality or revision or review earlier. So it's just an interesting thought that something that we thought only humans could do now is maybe sometimes better done by machines, especially when we talk about huge data sets. And again, this is really where the focus is on where AI is good. So I was positively surprised about that one.
I want to say that I think that these results are not representative of the society as a whole. I'm especially happy about this because I think that the GALA community over the last year got really educated on what to expect and what not. That is why, you know, the top one is like speed and efficiency gains. That is like the message that we've been seeing is like the one thing that you can take away is that this is going to make you more productive. And we've been like listening and reading and learning about what does and does not do generative AI. I'm really happy to see that a lot higher than FOMO. I think the FOMO is like, we are not missing out because you're already getting educated. I think that you get out of this community, it might be different. Like FOMO might go like out of the roof. You're saying, I don't understand still what's happening. So I think that is a good, healthy picture of our industry.
Yeah, it just seemed that there's more normalization about these technologies getting out to more people, more demographics faster than before, right? You know, previously with new tech, sometimes it was this kind of closed group of innovators who would find out about it, play around with it, and then eventually it would move into the early adopters, you know, early majority, late majority, etc. But now that's happening a lot faster, isn't it?
Yep, I think that it was Williams mentioning earlier that, you know, people got on their toes just because there is no ignoring this one, which is a much better position to be than when we've been with MT, where still a lot of people are only now starting to like wake up to it because now they hear in the narrative that MT is a granted thing.
Yeah.
And then they're using it.
Well-established technology.
Good stuff. And Gundula is giving us a view out to the future there of AI talking to AI. Great stuff. Great to see the chats going on. Let's move on to the next question. And in which area or areas is your organization deploying AI-powered technologies? So probably an interesting one for many who are still thinking about this, right? But translation, transcreation, localization clearly was leader. Content creation, though, interesting to see that. Any thoughts?
You mean that is lower or that is as high? What is your surprise here?
Yeah, for me, it's that it's just you know, it sounds like an obvious use case, but the fact that people are actually using it, you know, that's
yeah. I would say, I mean, it's of course also the audience who answered here, where I don't know if we have all the demographics, but I mean, at least on the services or the supplier side, that I think many of us, we also understand the complexity that goes into it. Of course, again, it's a co-pilot or it's helpful, but it's definitely not in any case a replacement of what we're doing.
I think that this one is tricky because it's you can get when all of the CAT tools are just like bringing some AI feature, then it's easy to tick that box and say we're doing it in production. Right? I think it's a good thing because it answers a lot of like the buyer's questions about like, hey, how are you bringing AI into our processes? It's like, well, my tools are actually AI enabled already. Okay, that's great. So that's probably why that is like it's going to be like a no-brainer. If you need to tick the box, you just look at your tools, and all the smart tool suppliers are adding some capabilities.
But isn't it also, Jose, you would say that, I mean, for example, within a translation system, management system, CAT tool, whatever, then it's easy enough, and I mean, we have done that already, I think in many places to add a AI feature. So let's say, for example, I mean, just put a character limitations, do that automatically. You can say that's an AI feature, right?
Yeah, but
yeah.
even easier than that is that we're seeing a lot of people who just like, you're in a translation tool and you can like right click on something and say, give me 4 other translations for this.
Right.
And then you go and you pick. Well, you're like AI enabled now. You might have like a very inefficient workflow if you need to look at like 5 translations for every segment, but you are AI enabled. So yeah, just one feature changes that response. But yeah, we had other cool things before, and I think that R&D in there will go up. That is where the actual innovation we can like really move the needle is.
So the ancillary question on the other side is, sometimes in order to find something out, you ask the opposite, right? And this is the great question that was asked in the survey. Why isn't your organization planning on deploying AI-powered technology? So what are those blockers right now, or barriers to entry? Some really interesting stuff in this one for me. Ethical concerns, it's been mentioned in the chat as well, that's gone up. And exiting the market, right? So that could be, closing a business, selling, pivoting, and data and training again score. interesting to see that. At this point, Patrick, if you're on the line, I know you had some overall thoughts on this, but I'd like to bring you in now. So please feel free to join us. And as Alison has said to everybody, you know, camera on if you like, and we're going to move to open mic in just a couple of minutes. Patrick, are you there?
I'm
Can you
here.
hear me? Hey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I mentioned this, I think, in the chat, right? I think in terms of the ethical concerns, I really see this as a trend, right? And it's very interesting looking at everything that's related to human and bias and subjectivity of things. The more we know about things, the more we know about it, and the risks might go up. We might know that something that we might not thought was a concern ethically now is, because you're learning more about this. So I see the trend going, like, it goes negative before it goes positive, because we're in that learning process and that learning curve. And the more we know, the better informed we are, to make those distinctions, what should be a concern or not be a concern. So I think that's a very interesting point that's going to keep happening. The question I have, or the curiosity I really have, is in what speed, because I see things moving extremely fast. And in the conversations I'm having in my circles, generally the motto I hear is, it's hard to keep up with everything, especially on the risk side, the legal side. There's so much going on, so many things in between the lines. So that's where I think that the power of community comes in handy, and that's where I think and having these types of conversation, having GALA as a platform, is an important thing, because it's hard to kind of navigate this solo or in an isolated manner.
Brilliant. And is that whole, like, you've been an advocate of this kind of open community and a lot of the things you've been involved in, including with GALA and the board. Do you think that's something which we just have to pivot to a lot more? It's something that just requires embracing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's where we are, right, as an association. And I see on the chat here a lot of the content related that came in 2023. And I think it's about keeping that engagement alive, right? Because it's not going anywhere. We are the ones who can drive this. Our conference in Valencia speaks to it, like it's all around AI and navigating all the do's and don'ts, and myths, and all the good stuff. I'll plug in here. Folks haven't submitted a proposal for the soapbox. There's still time for it. December 9th. Just plug it in right there, because I think that would be a great space to actually bring those thoughts, because I think it's a great format. And a lot, of course, of webinars coming, the academy coming and bringing that type of conversation around. So I think it's definitely to be more and more embraced. And again, and we only can do it together, for sure.
So more AI, Valencia, right? Springtime. If it's on your calendar, folks, get it in there. And Soapbox.
Yes.
Brilliant forum, isn't it? And if anyone's kind of thinking, and will I, won't I? Just do it. As Patrick says, it's a fantastic forum. Jose is an absolute advocate, loves it as well. So we'd love to see as many people getting involved in that one as possible.
I really also want to stress that, coming back to the community, and we also know the diversity of our GALA community, that this is not a tech project. AI is that we're talking about technology, but it really is about the whole ecosystem and the whole community here. And there's for everyone something to learn and to contribute as well. So this is what I also really find fascinating. As I said, it really changes everything, but it's not only a tech project. So get engaged.
Thank you, Britta. It's now your turn, open mic time. So I know people have been chatting vehemently already, but now if you want to raise your hand, and we'll cue you in. So how do you do it? Raise your hand or chat in Zoom. Let me know. I'll cue you in. You then unmute, give your name, make your point. Please keep it to 1 or 2 sentences. This way we can get number of voices in. So, Williams, I see you there, and thank you for your comments so far. Have you a comment?
Okay, thank you so much. So, from our perspective, as a non-for-profit organization providing language services, mostly for the public sector, I think I was the one who mentioned that it's actually keeping us in our toes, because we have been forced to put things in order that were never important before. Data governance, articulation of use cases, And the most important piece, and the one that I see as a significant challenge, is how can we influence technology partners to implement those use cases according to our needs? Sometimes there is a disconnection. Most companies in our position don't have the ability or don't have the financial power to actually build their own internal technologies. So how do we make sure that the technology sector that serve us actually are taking that into account? This is actually the reflection point that I would like to make here. And oh my God, I would like to actually participate in more meetings like this. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Williams. And, you know, that's one of the things that I certainly learned in the last year on the board is just the amount of touch points available to do just that with GALA, right? Just what you're saying.
Yep.
So, and the more the merrier. So if anyone else wants to join the conversation, just raise your hand.
I just wanted to call out that there is we're like very fortunate in this industry and in GALA in particular that we have a lot of like voices and people who are willing to like just keep relaying that message about what is important and things like ethics and all of that. So all of our membership and I don't know, I spend way too much time on LinkedIn most weeks of the year. But I found that when we do that and when we just like step up and keep talking about it and just like, you know, keep giving like as little bias as possible opinions, but keep bringing up things. I work in tech and I've noticed that even people in tech are listening. So I think that is like, we can be an amplifier. It is hard to change the world at large just through us, right? But we do have an impact. We do have an effect. And it's been surprising over the last 12 months. And definitely since I joined the board, I think that people start to like, you know, just listen and say, hey, quite honestly, that has happened. Saying it's like, well, if these people are an association that represents a bunch of like members, then probably what they're saying is interesting. So we're a pretty good like a speaker. What is that? A megaphone? Not a speakerphone, a megaphone to what is going on, and it happens in every industry around. So keep talking, keep being brave. You don't need to be a technologist even to talk about.
No, exactly. And it's also okay, as I said, to say, I don't know really. I mean, help me out. What is this? I don't understand it, and voice that.
I would like to mention very briefly, guys, that at MCIS, we are in the process of creating an artificial intelligence working group, compiling, and we are planning to put together people across our organization, and also members from our board of directors that have hands-on experience on implementing AI. And we are actually starting to produce things. For example, we are now in the process of creating a policy for responsible use of artificial intelligence. One of the articles actually came very relevant to that, and it's definitely going to be an addition or something for me to consider. And I think even though we might not have the ability to take advantage of AI immediately, we need to start putting things in order. That's why we cannot wait. The other issue with AI is that there is a lot of noise, and this is actually what is contributing to that FOMO. People don't really understand the implications of artificial intelligence, and I have seen a lot of technology providers promising the moons and the stars, but it's something that maybe, in my opinion, haven't reached the level of maturity that we feel comfortable with. As a company that provides services to vulnerable populations, ethical considerations are extremely important. So we have to be very, very intentional, and human connections always have to exist.
That's very interesting, Williams. And I think it is a case of, you know, if it's not being put in place, who's going to do it if not us, right? And I see a comment in from Ramona that it's worrying that the EU, after being hailed at being the first or one of the first to lay down AI rules, can't agree on how to regulate it. Well, you know, I live in the EU, not super surprising, but this is the kind of stuff we're going to see, isn't it? And it's who stands up, who's having the conversations, who's getting in their act together with others in a community like this, perhaps, that can help move it on. Let's move the conversation forward. We'll keep the open mic there, so you just raise your hand and I can cue you in. But what can we expect for 2024? You know, looking forward, you know, no one would have necessarily put their hand up and said, I got all this right. And maybe someone will. From this time last year, did you predict all this, right? Let's talk about, the business models. What will we see happen? Britta, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I said, I really think that it will hugely impact our business models. And what I see is that a discussion that we have had, I think, for decades is, I mean, just the price per word. I mean, that business model in some way, I mean, now it needs to be, discussed again or challenged again, because it simply doesn't make sense anymore. And I think that is an advantage for us as an industry, to get out of the, the transactional, get out of the commoditization, again, have discussions on a completely different level. But what I also see is that I mean, the language industry, very interesting. I mean, everyone who was maybe at now I mentioned competing event, Lockworld in Malmö this year, where Jaap van der Meer said that, in 10 years, nobody will talk about the language industry anymore, which I found interesting. And then he said, I mean, language will be everywhere. So it is really this, that, I mean, we have a new opportunity here to position ourselves in this, and the focus will be much more on strategizing, consulting, and actually more facilitating also better processes and workflows. It's not necessarily the translation as such. I mean, it really goes far beyond translation. And again, I truly believe that there's a place for everyone in this, also small service providers. As such, everyone actually has an opportunity to find their specific place in this ecosystem.
Thanks, Britta. And Jose, thoughts on that? Next year, what are we going to see?
I think that we're going to see a continuation of, I think that the hype is going to be different than this year. It was like just a novelty. We had to like cope with it. I think that a lot of like smaller companies who were trying to change the world using this like technological breakthrough, they're like failing. So a lot of like the enthusiasm is going to get curbed. And I think that we're going to see a lot of like smaller implementations for business specific applications. I think that we're going to lose some faith on the fact that it's going to replace machine translation or translation as a whole. And I think that we're going to be disrupted 2 or 3 times by what OpenAI does, because they have like better data than what we do on what it is that people really, really want. So I think that it's going to be smart to just do small increments of innovation where you can throughout the year. So we'll have to be very critical of what we see and what other people talk about. I think that we also will get more honest. I think that a lot more of us will be like talking to each other as opposed to like just the experts and the loud voices. We'll be talking to each other and say, what is really working for you? How much did it cost you? So I think that we're going to get more concrete, but not necessarily we're going to be like blown away over the next 12 months.
What I also see is, I mean, coming back to data and the linguistic assets as being strategically important, is that maybe we'll get a renaissance of terminology, or at least, knowledge management, knowledge graphs. We see those discussions a lot, that there is linguistic data that needs to basically educate those large language models in order to really be good. So really a revival of something that, again, we are really, really good at, and that we know, that will have a huge focus. So data management, data governance, and deep linguistic expertise.
You see, on that one, I expect some disruption that actually makes a lot of like the terminology management work that we do obsolete. That someone will come out with like a way to like keep mining automatically and identifying the key terminology and keep identifying like derivatives and so many other things.
Yeah, totally.
Someone else can like productize into, how to make translation better. So
good. I'll bring Patrick in on this conversation. So Patrick, thoughts on next year? What are we going to see?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Dave, I had the pleasure to actually represent GALA at a panel at the American Translation Association a few months ago, and it was very interesting because that's where you see the talent, right? A lot of the people who are involved in the work that's done. And I was actually very impressed. I hadn't been to that conference in many years, and being there and actually listening and paying attention to what people were saying, I saw a big shift in that space. I saw a big shift, and I think positive shift in terms of avoiding more of the resistance and really embracing what needs to be embraced. So I'm hoping, maybe it's a hope, not a prediction, that we are able in this near future to really look into that and see how we can play an active role in molding the positions and the pretty much the talent that we need to embrace this so fast moving, scenario that we have. So that's what I'm hoping to see in the future, is that we're also thinking, because it's great when we come together and have the conversation at this level and we talk about, so many scenarios and so many things that impact so many of us. But also thinking of what happens at the other side of this circle, right? The people who are actually the ones doing the work day in, day out, regardless of the functions they have, what positions are there to be had. And I think we have the opportunity to help shape those and prepare those to be able to keep moving. And I've heard a lot of this, and I think, Britt, I think you just mentioned, like, I've heard a lot of the people who were there saying that they broke away from the model of being in language industry conversations, but they are attending legal conferences. They're attending other things to see what other spaces are doing in terms of AI and the technology that's coming. So I'm hoping to see in the near future that we can all embrace and help shape the future as we have the opportunity to do so.
Brilliant. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Britta and Jose. And Alison, we're talking about next year. What's GALA doing next year? What's going on?
A lot, in short. Throughout the meeting, Issa's been dropping into the chat some resources, mostly content, some interviews. GALA's doing a lot, and I know that some of you or many of you sort of engage occasionally, and I just want to encourage you to engage more often. So obviously GALA Valencia, our annual conference, it's our flagship event. Its focus is not exclusively on AI, but that will surely permeate the entire conference, and that is the theme of the conference. And again, one last plug for the soapbox, which is really fun, by the way. So if you want to submit a proposal for that. And I want to just take a moment, and I'll ask if Issa could drop into the chat the link to the GALA strategic priorities, which are published on our website. And Dave, you don't have to show the slide because it's quite tiny. Well, okay, it's tiny as a lot of text. But what I want to say is that starting about 2 years ago, the GALA board undertook this kind of strategic planning, I guess you could say. And it was so hard because we were asking ourselves, what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years? And everybody threw up their hands and said, I have no idea. I don't know what this industry is going to look like in 3 to 5 years. So we did our best. We thought about the trends, the impacts, and we thought, okay, what should GALA be doing about this to help our members prepare and face the future ready to succeed? So one thing I want to say is that our approach is generally, future oriented and human centric. And so we want to talk about the future. We want to embrace the future, but we also want to talk about the role of the human in the future. So that's always going to permeate our approach, our content, how we talk about things. And so we broke it down into these 4 different areas, which you can see on screen or you can look at on the website. And Britta and I were talking about it earlier. It's uncanny, actually, that we got it right in a lot of ways. And so obviously technology is probably our top priority, and understanding the developing language technologies and how they're going to impact every part of this business. We have some goals you can see there, how we're going to approach it, why it matters. The business landscape, that's really what Britta was talking about earlier with regard to business models and how we think the business models might change because of changes in roles, for example. And the one that I really like a lot, and I think is newer for GALA, is this one that we call industry impact. And what that means is, what impact will our industry have on the general population or in the general business community? And we've been trying for years, literally like all of GALA's existence, to get a stronger foothold in the general business, landscape, to prove the value of this industry. And the the wisdom and knowledge and experience that it has amongst its professionals. And we feel like, hey, our moment might be here, because especially relating to accessibility and inclusion, language is now understood to be a part of that. And it's now part of this zeitgeist. And I think we have a real opportunity. So finally, you can see talent. That is a perpetual challenge of ours, to attract talent. And by the way, different kinds of talent now to our industry. So everything that we do, all the programs that we offer, all the content that we develop, it must be aligned in one way or another to our strategic priorities. And so next year, we'll be focusing on this. We've got so many programs for you to participate in. Obviously, we produce a lot of content. Isa does an amazing job at that, you know, articles, interviews, webinars. We've got obviously some other live presentations like this one. Sometimes we do LinkedIn Live. GALA Academy, the full lineup of GALA Academy is already published on the GALA website. Go check it out. That's exceptional training opportunities for you and your team. Annual conference goes without saying. We've also got special interest groups. So, you know, Williams was talking about these opportunities for, you know, working groups or, you know, small group discussions. We offer that every month, and take advantage of it. It might not be specifically about AI, but it's going to be about other topics that obviously bring it in or are influenced by it. Finally, I'll just say that our surveys are important. And I know everybody has some survey fatigue from time to time, but they are, they're valuable, and they're going to keep happening. So in Q1, we're going to be doing a deeper dive on AI topics and technology topics, and we'll appreciate your participation in that. We'll be using the results of that to talk about some things at GALA 2024 Valencia. And I'll just wrap it up by saying, I want to do more of this. Thank you for engaging. Thanks for participating. Don't be a stranger, and stick with us, because 2024 is going to be cool.
So watch for continual and new stuff next year. You got a bit of a teaser trailer. Survey results, I believe, will be made available, Alison, on this recording as well.
Yep.
Well, great. On that note, just my job is to close this down. So thank you to Britta, Jose, Patrick, and everyone who got involved in the chat. Thank you all. Alison, thank you. The whole GALA team who's behind the scenes, you know, doing the hamster roll and working really hard all the time. We very much appreciate their efforts. Without further ado, thank you, everybody. Happy holidays to all. See you at the next GALA event, virtually and in Valencia.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays.